I want to talk to retired major of the U.S. Air Force, Thomas Havilland, who has been on a crusade over the last maybe like 5 years or longer, trying to get to the bottom of these white fibrous clots that have been appearing inside of corpses and living Americans as they are going to the doctor, or they are sadly winding up on the operating table and passing away. And embalmers across the country have been finding these white fibrous clots in these bodies.
You know, when you see any mainstream media story that there is some kind of spin on it, what you might not know is exactly what that spin is. That's why Ground News is there to help you. Take, for instance, Trump's new tariffs. Well, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called the recession panic media-driven, but you don't see that on your usual news feed. Ground News can tell you exactly what that panic is from what side. There's proof that the liberal and mainstream media either exaggerates claims or completely ignores facts that don't align with their bias. It's very hard to see unless you know that this is the matrix and you can see it in a binary. That's why Ground News will help you. Any topic that you want, you can search the topic and it will give you a list of how it is covered and then also put a spin on it and actually explain as well. For instance, this is left out or this is unsaid. This new, like I said, GOP poll that says that most Republicans support a strike against Iran by the United States. Well, there is omission in how that poll was carried out. It is quite clearly propaganda, and Ground News will help you see it. So check it out for yourself. Go to ground.news/redacted or scan the QR code you see on your screen. If you use this code, you will get 40% off unlimited access. So again, it's ground.news/redacted. You get all the world's news in one place, plus it helps you see through the spin. So one more time, ground.news/redacted.
Well, our next guest, Thomas Havilland, was just in Tennessee at the Funeral Directors Association, where he was there as a guest speaker, but he asked a pretty remarkable question to ask all these embalmers, how many of you have been seeing this, and how many of them raised their hand. Thomas, great to see you. Welcome back to the show, and thank you for your continued work on shining a light on this horrific, really, I don't know what the word to call it would be.
Epidemic? Could we use that word?
Could we call it an intentional? What would you say, Thomas? I'll put the words in your mouth. What would you say? This is an intentional destruction of our race by these people.
I don't know if it's intentional or not, Clayton, but it sure is prevalent. You know, we've been tracking these white fibrous clots that these embalmers have been seeing in their corpses for the last 5 years, actually. It started with COVID, with a few of the embalmers seeing it during COVID. Then it progressed and exploded in 2021 after the rollout of the COVID vaccines. But we caught a big break about a week ago. Actually, it started last year when we were running our 2024 Worldwide Embalmer Blood Clot Survey. The president of the Tennessee Funeral Directors Association, Mr. Taylor Moore, reached out to me and said, Tom, hey, I'd like to have you come speak to our embalmers and funeral directors at our annual conference coming up in June of 2025. And that happened just about a week ago on June the 8th. I traveled to Franklin, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, and went to their convention and talked to the embalmers there. And we actually have on video footage, Clayton, about 30 embalmers and funeral directors raising their hands, and about 2/3 of them, 18 out of the actually 28 that took the survey and were there in the room that day, said they were seeing the white fibrous clots in 2025. So about 2/3 of the embalmers that were present at that conference and are on video are confirming what we've all known for some time now, that these clots they exist and they are indeed prevalent. In fact, we asked them, I took a survey, a paper survey of those embalmers, and in that survey, of the 28 that responded, 25 of them actually do active embalming right now. And of those, like I said, 18 said they were seeing the white fibrous clots, and 10 said they were not. So that's a 64%. And then when we asked them what percentage of your bodies are you seeing the clots in, that averaged 17%. So 1 out of every 6 corpses contains these unusual white fibrous clots, still in 2025.
Let's I don't know if there's sound on this or not, but I wanted to show, so we have the video verification of what you were just talking about here. Is there sound on this? Let's play it. This is you asking these embalmers how many of you are seeing this.
In fact, embalmers, can I get a show of hands in the room? How many folks in here are actually doing active embalming right now? Raise your hands, leave your hands up. Okay.
All right, so this is active embalming.
Of those people, leave them up. Of those people that have doing active embalming, if you're seeing these white fibrous clots over the last few years, keep your hand up. If you're not seeing them, please put your hand down. Okay?
So almost the entire room keeps their hand up when you ask, are you seeing these white fibrous clots? Almost everyone. And like one or two people put their hands down. This is
right, and that was confirmed in the paper survey that I took later on that day, and I allowed the embalmers to take it anonymously. And so this is a big deal, Clayton. This is the first time we have official acknowledgement from a United States State Funeral Director Association. These clots are indeed happening and that they're quite prevalent. In addition to the white fibrous clots, about 70% of the embalmers and funeral directors said they're still seeing what's called micro-clots. They describe it as what looks like coffee grounds or dirty blood in the corpses. As you're draining the blood off the corpse, trying to get the formaldehyde in, they see what looks like coffee grounds in the blood. And this is a indication of a phenomenon called micro-clotting, which can be just as dangerous as these white fibrous clots. You know, we think these things are causing strokes and heart attacks. The micro-clotting occurs at the capillary level, your very small blood vessels, and it can block the exchange of oxygen at the lungs, and then the carrying of that oxygen to all the major organs of the body, including your brain, your eyes. And the embalmers were seeing that, unfortunately, and also about 17% of the corpses, too. 1 out of 6 corpses. Yeah. So this is a nasty, and this is a phenomenon they used to see prior to COVID, but in much less than 5% of their corpses, typically in patients that had heavy chemotherapies. This is at least a tripling of the micro-clotting phenomenon. And of course, these, like I said, embalmers with 20 or 30 years of experience had never seen the white fibrous clots prior to the years of COVID, and then an explosion of them starting in 2021 with the vaccines.
So we're talking about correlation, right? We had the pandemic, we had the vaccine rollout, and then this is happening. Now, something RFK Jr. says many times is we have so many toxins in the American society that we can't know what's causing what, vaccines, everything. So, but you're saying that this pivotal moment was not when we had, I don't know, red dye number 5 or whatever, that there's a pivotal point that we can observe.
Yes, Natalie. If you look at old pathology books prior to 2020, you won't see these white fibrous clots. There was a condition called white clot syndrome way back in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and that was being driven by the drug heparin. It was some people were having an allergic reaction to heparin that was too strong of a strength. So they actually reduced the strength of that heparin, and that helped that problem go away back in the late 80s, early 90s. What's interesting about that is heparin, that was actually white clot syndrome based upon the element sulfur. This, we believe, is based on the element phosphorus, and the two of them just happen to sit side by side on the periodic table. So we believe the phospholipid nanoparticles and the spike protein from either the COVID virus or the COVID vaccine is becoming phosphorylated as well, and it's binding with our body's natural blood clotting protein called fibrinogen. We have a blood clotting protein called fibrinogen. It's in a liquid form in our blood plasma. Whenever there's damage done to the endothelial lining of inside of our blood vessels, our arteries and our veins, then that triggers a conversion of that fibrinogen into a white solid called fibrin. And it's supposed to look like what's on the left side of the screen there. Nice, smooth spaghetti noodles. They kind of form a net, and they collect your red blood cells and your platelets and form a nice clot. So whenever you have a cut, that clot will form. And then eventually when the wound is healed, then another enzyme we have called plasmin comes along, attaches to that nice, smooth spaghetti, breaks the clot down, and then it goes away. You're good to go again. But look on the right of the screen. Look what happens when the fibrinogen is combined with the spike protein, either from the COVID virus or from the COVID vaccine. It becomes all twisted, misfolded, and has all these nasty nodules on it. And then it becomes difficult for that enzyme plasmin to break down the clot. And then what happens is the clot tends to grow and persist and become these nasty, large white fibrous clots. if you go back to that image for a second and go to the next slide on that one, you'll actually see that, back up one slide, and you'll see that image right there. Embalmer Richard Hirschman sent about a dozen of the embalmer's cloths that he pulled out of corpses to a neuroscientist in Japan named Dr. Kevin McCarran, and he looked at the cloths, a thin 5 micrometer slice under a scanning electron microscope at a very high magnification of 5,000 times. And look what he sees there from the embalmer clot. See how twisted the fibrin is? See how misfolded it is? See all the nodules on there? Now, you tell me, which one does it look like more, Natalie? Does it look more like the smooth spaghetti, or does it look like the nasty fibrin that's in contact with the spike protein from the virus or the vaccine?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's deeply disturbing.
Yeah, so basically we have visible proof, Clayton and Natalie, at both the eye level, right? You can see these things. And here's another one. This is a nasty one here. This is a 5.5-inch clot that was taken out of the abdominal aorta, one of the largest blood vessels in the body. So we have visual proof at the eye level. We also have proof at the microscopic level that the spike protein from either the virus or the vaccine is doing tremendous damage to the vascular system in a significant number of people, right? If it's in 16, 17% of the dead, 1 out of 6 corpses, well, it brings into question, well, what percentage of the living are walking around right now with these white fibrous clots forming inside them?
Well, that was going to be my next question. And how do we figure that out?
Right. What is the next step to get a real research project going?
Well, and how can we solve it? I mean, if I'm walking around, people who got this vaccine or got this spike protein, they're walking around with this somewhere, or they've gotten booster shots, they got all this crap floating around in their body. And how do they get it out of there? I mean, is there a way to get it out of there that we know of?
Not once these white fibrous clots form, we don't think there's any way to dissolve them or get them out. I've been in contact with a cath lab whistleblower from Jacksonville, Florida. He's an endovascular specialist and cardiologist who's been admitted to me that he's been removing these same white fibrous clots for the last 4 years. And what he does, he works in what's called a catheterization lab, a cath lab for short. And he goes into the person's body, a living person, with flexible catheters that either scrape the clot out, they suck it out with a vacuum, or he actually can lasso the clot and pull it out that way as well. So they try clot-busting drugs like tissue plasminogen activator, TPA, and they work great against traditional grape jelly clots or what's called chicken fat clots, but they don't seem to have any effect at all, these white fibrous clots. So the trick is to not have them form in the first place with the spike protein, which we think is causing the problem mainly. So the best way to do that is to, Dr. Peter McCullough, for example, recommends drugs, or actually natural supplements like nattokinase, bromelain, curcumin, to help detox the body from the spike protein so the clots don't form in the first place.
Well, Thomas, I know you've been on this story for more than like 5 years now. I think we had you first on. I feel like it's been like 5 years since you've been on this story, trying to get people to pay attention to this. And it seems like you've broken through finally. It's taken a lot of hard work and dedication. I know you and others like Dr. Ruby, Mike Adams have been like calling attention to this over the years. And what are you hoping for next? What are you hoping for from the Trump administration?
Definitely, since the Trump administration's in there, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, Dr. Marty Makary, those people, I'm hoping that they will now basically relieve me of my job so I don't have to do this anymore. And they actually start looking at this problem because, like I said, the evidence is pretty overwhelming that these clots exist. They are prevalent. And the timing with the introduction of the COVID vaccines is very, very suspicious. So, I think they need to get off their rear ends, Clayton and Natalie, and do their jobs and look at this. And I'd be very happy to offer my time for free to work with them to help assist them in running surveys and checking in with embalmers, funeral directors, cardiologists, vascular surgeons, endovascular specialists that know this problem is happening, but until now have been staying silent about it.
Well, I think you're an American hero. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing and calling attention to this. I know you've been absolutely relentless on this. So thank you so much, Thomas. Great to see you. And if there's anything we can always do to help, and I just want to say this. We've never been able to have you live with us on YouTube. We've only ever been able to share your story on Rumble. And I think we've turned a corner because now YouTube has like pulled back on their like anti-COVID discussions, and now we can actually have you here live on YouTube. So this is like, or I think we're breaking through, and it's not being censored in the way that it used to be. So that's good news. There we go.
It is. Thanks, Clayton.
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. Great to see you as always.